most HVAC and plumbing companies track the wrong KPIs. So by the end of this video, you'll feel comfortable of exactly what you should be tracking, where you should be tracking, and why. So the first KPI that you want to make sure you have a good handle on is call center. Call center booking rate, specifically on demand calls. So when I say call center booking rate, it's more so on the demand side rather than anything else. So a demand call is just somebody calling in asking for a service. So they have an issue with their drain, they have an issue with their HVAC system, it's not, the heat's not calling, or whatever the issue might be, and we want to make sure that we're able to track each and every one of those calls and see exactly what percentage of them are we booking. Now, if you just Google and you just look online, they're going to say, oh, anywhere from 30 to 40%, and then a good booking rate is 70%. That's BS. So at least my experience in the industry, which we've helped companies grow, and our family business was around 80 to 90% booking rate. And obviously this is kind of the differentiator between companies that stay at $3 million and companies that become $15 million a year. That's one big KPI that I would be very cognizant of. Why does it matter? All right, you have a demand call coming in. You want to make sure that you're booking around 80 to 90% of those. Now, that means that your call center is going to have multiple things going on. You may want to have scripts for different types of customers, and the best way to first tackle it is to just get a common FAQ sheet. Common questions, common issues. Let's say that you review 5 or 10 calls and you see, oh, these 3 or 4 didn't book. Why didn't they book? Okay. Were they just asking for price over the phone? Were they just wanting to get onto your call board that day and you didn't have any availability? And that's kind of what we'll go over in a little bit here. But either way, you need to make sure that you're getting that 80 to 90% book rate for those demand calls. I mean, think about it like this. If you're a potential customer, if your heating goes out, or let's say your faucet isn't working, or your water heater isn't working, well, you're going to need service right then and there. And there's no reason why we cannot book that person calling in, because they already have the issue. We already did the marketing means to get in front of them. Now we just need to book them. So common issues. Common issues for smaller businesses is that it's the owner answering the phone, right? And a lot of times it goes to voicemail or whatever. For middle tier companies, the hard part is making sure that they have a good script. That's what I would say. That's the most common issue that we see, is not having a good script and FAQs to where the call center reps, they're just kind of taking things as they go, and the owner isn't really keeping track of exactly what is going down, and they don't know the scripts themselves. So for bigger companies, the biggest issue is let's say, call center manager isn't keeping their call reps conditioned. So they're not doing role playing. They're not constantly attacking the issue where they may be. And what happens is that over time, you realize it's an issue, but by the time you realize it's an issue, well, you've had multiple meetings, you're like, okay, what's going on? Our revenue is not hitting. And, it takes months before you finally realize, okay, well, we need to go over this. We're not role-playing consistently. We're not keeping track of our FAQs, all those things. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road for big businesses. So either way, make sure that you're consistently, I should say, not constantly, but consistently each and every day, role-playing some with your call center, getting those FAQs, making sure that you're keeping track of the demand calls coming in and what percentage of them are we booking, so that way you can see exactly where you want to be or where you are. And where you want to be is at 80 to 90%, because we already did all the work to get them to call us. Now let's make sure that we book them. All right, the second most important KPI that I always mention, and the reason I put the call center as the first one is because, well, that's where everything gets funneled through. If you have a really, really small funnel, think of it like that. If you get 100 calls and you're only siphoning through 50, well, then we're left with 50 calls. It's just, now if we perfect everything, we're left with those 50. So either way, we just need to make sure that that first stage is hit, so that way our next steps and our next KPIs are getting the best chance. So the second KPI that I always touch on is the TGL, the flip rate, the tech generated lead rate. And what that really is just the service technician. This kind of goes into more service systems. But for the service technician to understand that they want to flip jobs, this is This could be service department. This could be flipping it over to the install department. Either way. And we have a kind of a rule with the plumbing, which is root cause plus one. And what that is that you have a root cause. You have an issue that the technician is going to fix. Let's say they have a drain clog, right? So we're going out there for a drain cleaning, but every time we want to offer a plus one. And that, honestly, as kind of owners, as guys in the home service space, we're always just kind of like, oh, let's fix the problem, let's get out of there. But we need to get ourselves out of that. And especially technicians, they're very much in that mindset of like, let's fix the problem, let's get out of here. They're technical geniuses, right? They're not necessarily even thinking about the sales side. Now, common thing that I get from kind of smaller or even mid-sized companies is, oh yeah, we do good with that. And then I ask the percentage, and they have no idea the percentage of them that actually get flipped. For HVAC, it's really, really important to get that flip over to the sales department. What that means is, you know, your system had X, Y, and Z issue. I went ahead and, or you give them the option to repair it, and let's say they say yes. So you had this issue, I fixed this issue, you have heat or cooling or whatever, and now, just so you know, we also could, you know, your system's 15 years old or whatever the age of the system is, we can't have a comfort advisor come out and give you a quote to see how much it's going to be. And just so you know, it's really no risk, because if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. If you do, we'll actually refund you the charge that I'm charging you today. So that kind of puts the homeowner in a position where they're not really in a position where they're like, you know, even if I don't go with it, doesn't really matter. But if I do, I at least get the refund on it. Really, really easy. On HVAC side, you want to hit at least 50%. 50% is the rule of thumb. And very similar to plumbing, you know, if you have a root cause, you know, or let's just say if you're a technician that, you know, their system's only 5 years old and they're having issues, probably under warranty, you're coming out there to fix it. Well, then you want to offer, whether it's a filter upgrade, whether it's a UV system, something to really help. And obviously, if you do HVAC and plumbing, that's the most ideal, because that just gives you way more things to give as an option. For us, when we started, we were only HVAC. So it kind of limited our capability to be able to kind of tackle all of those different things, but or to give more options, I should say. But if you're plumbing and HVAC, well, then it's a walk in the park comparatively. Why is this a big thing? The biggest reason as to why the TGL and the flip rate is so important, and that percentage, and to hit on aged equipment, it's at least 50%, and on those that aren't, we want to be hitting 40 to 50% on just, you know, giving them that root cause, fixing the root cause, giving them an option for a plus one, and them going with it that 40 to 50% of the time. But the reason you really want, especially in HVAC, when you flip a job to sales and it closes, and we're going to go over that, that's kind of down the pipeline there, down the customer journey. But either way, we want to make sure that we're hitting that, because that's where we make our money. We don't really make money off of going to a person's house, taking the time to get the lead, dispatching them, driving the truck, paying the guy the hours to get there and then fix a capacitor, right? And if you're in the HVAC and plumbing space, everybody thinks you make all this money. But the honest truth is that's pretty low margin. The money is when you get the comfort advisor in the home and he sells a $10,000 install. That's where the money's made. That's really what you want to focus on. So we need a 50% flip rate from the service side on aged equipment, which is 10 plus years or older. Sorry, I'm kind of throwing terms out there, probably a little, definitely a niche video, but either way, 10 years or older, and we want to flip that over to sales at a 50% rate, minimum. Obviously, some guys are going to be better than others. You're going to find that. And one thing that you also will notice, and this is kind of more operational knowledge, is you'll have different technicians who are really, really good at flipping, but they're maybe not necessarily the best technical techs. And you'll find that maybe some of your technical techs who are absolute geniuses, who are awesome, maybe aren't that great on flipping. And what I always mention is that your flippers, or the guys who flip the aged equipment over to sales, they're your actual money makers. So the goal is to get them on the jobs that are 10 years or older. And if you have like warranty work or something like that, give that to your technician who's really, really strong at troubleshooting, etc. Just because you want to make money, and that's the best way to do it. So that's the second most important KPI. And how do you implement that? The most important thing you can do is track your numbers. So tag in your CRM. If you have a CRM, hopefully you do, Doesn't matter if that's House Call Pro, if that's Service Titan, tag it as aged equipment so you know, and that way you can pull reports on it. You can physically look through the week and you can get your numbers and you can say, okay, we had 10 aged equipment jobs ran and we only flipped 2. You have to know your numbers before you attack the problem. So that's what I would say. Now, as far as how to get the service technicians, let's say that you have tracked your numbers and you're behind, you want to make sure that you're giving adequate training to your technicians. So making sure that they are aware of the numbers, that they have incentives, and third, that they're actually getting training on it. So you're doing role playing with the technicians. You don't want to be in the situation where they don't really know what the offer is. They don't really know. They're iffy on it. If there's any iffiness, you are cooked. Your numbers are going to be destroyed. So just make sure that you're going through, you're getting some good role playing in, every so often, and you're doing ride-alongs with the technicians. Whether you have a service manager, if you're a bigger company, if you're a mid to small company, it's the owner, you yourself, ride along with them, make sure that they're giving the options, that they're delivering it really confidently. And you also notice just different things like, they don't really seem so confident here. Or, they didn't really convince me to have the comfort advisor come out. Or they offered, in plumbing, they fixed the root cause, but then they just kind of brushed over the +1. It wasn't really like a part of the process. They make it feel like it. In that case, then you'll know what you need to do training on and train them up. So that's what I would say. That's the second most important KPI is keeping track of your flip rates in totality. So the third most important KPI to really keep track of is your close rate, your sales department. Keeping track of your numbers to see exactly what percentage of TGLs am I flipping. Okay, because a lot of times I talk to companies and they're all about, I want install, quotes. I want requests for replacements, all those things. And what's interesting is if you look at a company that is at $2 million, $3 million, comparative to a company that's doing 15, 20 million in revenue, this is one of the biggest differentiators. Their money is made through the flipping and then the closing of their aged equipment. So when they go out on the service call, they're flipping it over to the sales department, and then we're keeping track of what percentage are we closing. If you're going for those replacements, yes, we have it segmented in 2 different buckets. One is TGLs and one is marketing leads. So the tech-generated leads are the ones that we want to close at minimum at 65% minimum. When I went to some trainings down in Alabama, I was talking to some companies that were doing 80 to 90% close rate on their TGLs. So 65 is just baseline, like that's the minimum you got to hit. And for your marketing leads, those obviously are a little different because what are you doing? They already know. They probably already had somebody come out and tell them, hey, this is an issue. Now they're calling around to get quotes. And you want to make sure your sales process is dialed in, showing them, hey, this is the reason why we cost this much. You don't want to be the cheapest, right? That'll probably be another video. But either way, you have 2 buckets where it's marketing leads, where you're probably bidding against a couple other companies, and then the tech-generated leads, you're usually not. Because you already provided the service, you already got them up and running, or maybe that's just dead, right? I don't know, the compressor shot, right? In that case, it doesn't make sense to replace it. It's a 12-year-old system, 15-year-old system, get a new system, right? And in that case, either way, whether you fixed them and got them up and running or a fatal failure to the system, we want to make sure that we're keeping track, and those are what's called TGLs, tech-generated leads. So that's why it's important, because your margins, the money you make, is going to be off of those sales. It's going to be off of the install department. Your service department is going to be feeding those leads in. Because yes, you're going to be getting marketing leads if you're doing it correctly. However, your close rates are going to be smaller. You're going to be a lot less. So the TGL close rate is the third most important KPI that I give, because if you have the other 2 fixed, it feeds into this one. Now, why is it important? We went over that. Now, how do you implement it? How are you going to keep track of this? So the biggest thing is to make sure, it goes back to my last point of keeping track of your TGL flip rates in general, keeping it tagged as aged equipment. Because if it's tagged as aged equipment, you're going to be able to track it. If you could track it, then you can see, all right, the service technicians aren't hitting their KPIs, or the salespeople aren't hitting their KPIs. So you need to then segment it at the end of each week or the end of each day, preferably, depending on how big you are, how much capacity you have. But at minimum, every week you need to be looking at, all right, we had 20 TGLs ran, and we only closed 10, we're at 50%, right? We're quite a bit below KPI. That's where I always say it's just so important to keep track of what our close rate is. So how do you actually close those people? All right, well, this is where it kind of comes into, and I'll probably make another video on the whole sales process, but you want to be presenting in home. You want to A, offer financing, B, present in home. 3, we want to make sure we're presenting with at least 4 options. And we want to make this simple for the customer. We don't want to just show them, I did this for a while when I did HVAC sales. I'd flip over the Excel, a sheet. That's literally what we did. And we'd have, the ML14, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd have the Bosch systems and we'd have the Goodman systems. And I actually sold really, really well with that. However, if you have sales guys, they're probably not going to be in the same position. They're not going to feel as comfortable with it. They didn't grow up in it. With us, we're a family business. We're 3rd generation. So for me, it's second nature. But for them, you're going to need to give them a good sales process to go through to where they can close in home. So you need to have the capability to get contracts and payment, so financing in most cases, and you can close them right there in the home. Majority of them need to be closed in the home, and you need to be showing the monthly. People really care about the monthly cost. They don't really care about the total. Most people are not going to write you a $10,000 check for it. So you need to be keeping track, and you need to say, hey, here's your 4 options. This one comes with the government, the energy efficiency it hits all the KPIs for that. So you're going to get a tax credit of $2,000 if you get this system, right? And you just have it divided up really nicely. So you need to already have this sales process dialed in for your technicians. That's kind of the next main point as to how you get it, having your sales process dialed in. Presenting in the home, offering financing, offering 4 options that's easy for your sales guy to understand, but also for the customer, and presenting those monthly numbers. So that's how you really dial in that KPI. So those are the 3 most important KPIs to keep track of. If you have any thoughts, any questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And just make sure that you're dialing those in. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you get the right partners, you figure out exactly how to do it, you get the scripts, all those things, you can dial it in pretty well. So if you're interested in learning about dialing in those KPIs, just message us. You can find us, you can comment, etc., and we'll make sure to get back to you. And I'll talk to you then.